Good morning. Welcome to this session. It's a real pleasure having you with us today. And many thanks to the organizer, many thanks to BDVA, to the European Commission, to the Slovenian presidency for this opportunity. So let's start our session. That's is about enabling data economy for local communities. Some rules: only speakers and moderator will have the chance to switch on the camera and the audio. Anyway, the session will be interactive, so you can use your Q&A B2Match box to provide question anytime. We will go through the question at the end during the panel session. For any technical issue, please contact the session host. Today, we will bring you through the whole session with this group of people. So we have Andrea Lampe from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia. Then we have Vega Rodriguez-Varez from ITA Innova. And it's me, Roberto Di Bernardo, from Engineering Informatica. In particular, Vega and myself are involved in the BDVA, in the Smart Governance and Smart Cities Hub Working Group. Then, some sentence to introduce the session. Studies say that in public sector, data are still underutilized and undershared. There are for sure several initiatives. Many of them are disconnected, so we have still some silos culture. The digital technology can help overcoming this aspect and support the further development of society and economy. For this, there are a lot of investment from the European Commission. The European data strategy is putting the basis for the common data spaces. There are a lot of investment on Horizon Europe, the Digital European Program, to financing a real and actually deployment of infrastructure supporting data space in several sectors. One of those is the smart cities and communities. And definitely AI, artificial intelligence, represent a flying wheel for what concerns the acceleration towards data economy and take up of data. So the section will provide you with an overview about current opportunity and actual action, but also the challenge in setting up data economy for local community, seen as a primary level to achieve the impact at EU society. The agenda of today, we will have an introduction already over, and when we have a keynote speech session and a panel session where we have your question there. In particular, we have these two sessions will provide you with the angle, the perspective from different actors. So we will have policy making from the European Commission. We have the voice from the end user, the cities, so association of cities, but also association of businesses. Coming on during the panel, we will have the voice from funded project, in particular a cluster of project funded under DT Governance to Health, project funded under the ICT 48, and then the voice of the National Statistical Institute, again from local ecosystem in Slovenia, but also the voice of GaiaX. But I don't want to keep too much longer in this introduction section, so I'm proud now to introduce you to our first keynote speaker. It's an honor for us to have Mr. Eddie Hartog with us from the European Commission, long experienced European Commission, now head of unit C3 on technologies for smart community. So please, Mr. Hartog, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and thank you all for joining. I think you have a very dense number of days on the Big Data Value Forum, so I hope that I will be able to make a contribution to that. And what I would like to do with you today is maybe dissect the title of this particular session a little bit, enabling data economy for local communities. I'm really pleased with this focus on the local communities for a number of reasons. First of all, everything you experience is local. I am experiencing this conference behind my desk today. You are experiencing somewhere else. And hopefully the next time we will be able to meet in the same room and we have a different experience. So everything is local. The center of gravity is really local. I'm also happy with the word communities because we often spoke about the smart cities. We've now moved to the communities, also particularly to cover rural areas, but also, that's often forgotten, sub-city entities, because a city is not a one system. There's various systems in the city. So even having that focus on the local communities today is very important. At the same time, I should say, if you look at the big data, there's no point sitting in your cocoon and having all the data that you own or have access to and sit on it. You really need to share. And that is really the idea that we have in the work that we are doing today. What is the optimum size of sharing and how do you work with it? Now, often we have found that a city on its own is almost irrelevant. Well, it can be an ecosystem, but really in a digital era, cities need to be connected between themselves. That's why we've emphasized so much the links for the Wi-Fi, broadband networks, 5G. They need to be connected. The communities need also to be part of that bigger European Union or the bigger globe. At the same time, if you want to do action, the community level is too small and the global level or even the European level is too big. And that's why you see a lot of cities now clustering, either in a region or in a cross-border cluster, and say, let's do this together. And I think we'll get a few examples today. So that's my start on the local communities. The second point is data. Now, I'm not going to have to explain to you after the days you've had already on data, the importance of data. I think Roberto mentioned that as well, and various speakers will do that again. But what is the European Union role on data? What we are trying to do is look at the access and use of data and how can we make the most of it for all of us. Maybe a bit less on the ownership, which sometimes seems to be the focus of this. And for that, Roberto again mentioned it, we have the data strategy, and it's too little time to go into the full-fledged aspects of the data strategy. But the idea is really to come from data to information, to be able to use it appropriately, but also to start sharing more. And sometimes you don't realize the data that you have, the value that it has. And be really focusing on that open data ecosystem. So that's my second point on the data. The third point is on the economy, the data economy, as you mentioned. Now, I would rather use the word data society rather than economy, because it's more than just the economic part of it. But whether it's society or economy, it's all about the value creation of the data that we are trying to look at. And their value creation is often immediately seen as the business aim. And that is true. We're trying to look at that as well. That's why colleagues from DG Grow, for example, work on an intelligent cities challenge, look at the proximity economy and see how we can use the data to do this. But for us, it's also important that we have artificial intelligence driven solutions for cities. And that for that, you need data from other cities, from other communities. You need to share that and you need to be able to digest that in an intelligent way. And that is also what we are trying to do with that data space for the communities. Now, one of the aspects that is often forgotten and where we don't have a strong policy yet is the negotiations on data. And as I said, it's not the ownership that's the most important, but the access. And often you find that local communities have a lot of data, they buy a service, then they give away the data, and sometimes have to buy their data back. They don't even manage it. Also there we are in a conversation with many partners to actually have that access better regulated. Last word that you have in the title is enabling. setting up a data economy or a data society cannot be done top down. It can also not be done fully bottom up. So there needs to be an enabling and facilitating element that we can provide in the European Union. And I say the European Union because we have our own rules, our own values around data, for example, the data privacy regulation that we can set up. And we've tried to complement that recently with the Digital Market Act and the Digital Service Act, because we still think that the use of data needs to be regulated somehow from the top down to allow that ecosystem. So these initiatives are really to enable the use of the data. We also try to do that through the data spaces that were already mentioned. Ideally, all global data are in one big data pot, and then you come to a destination Earth and a virtual copy of the world. But often that is too big. You need to cut that into small components, and hence our policy on the data spaces, one of which will be the data space for local communities, and we're working on that. And we try to enable that, to help you, to facilitate that through a number of funding instruments. Again, you are probably better equipped to know all the details about the various funding instruments than I am. We try to work from the research to the deployment into the massive investments through, for example, the cohesion policy and the RRF. Now, what does that lead me to as a conclusion? It's really about capturing that spirit of the digital transformation or the digital transition that we are going through, and it's about joining and sharing. I mean, there was an anecdote that Commissioner Kroes once said, that you're sitting next to a 14-year-old who had a wonderful invention, and she said, "Oh, you should run to the intellectual property office and claim intellectual property." He said, "Madame, if I do that, that's the end of my information. I actually need to join and share and improve what I've invented and share it with the others." And that is really the spirit that we are trying to create. And I'm really pleased to see also Paulo here, Ulrich from Gaia X, from the OASC, from a number of partners that we've been working with, because I gradually see traction in the European market to do that together, to share these practices in catalogs, in marketplaces, to develop joint plans and strategies and to share them with that. We as a European Union will try to provide all the local communities with toolboxes, with small amounts of funding, with some technical evaluation of where they are to facilitate them to go there. And then the end, and I'll end this introduction with a small dream that I have. We would have a very powerful network of local digital twins across the European Union that brings all the value of the data together and allows each of the citizens to get the maximum out of it, and each of the political leaders in those communities to provide the services that their citizens so much need. So we need to make that digital transformation work for us, and we need to work with the local communities to do that. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation, and thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hartog. Really inspiring speech. I already keep some word from your speech. So in particular, the message that everything starts from local. Then I also mentioned and join and share. This is another key message, and negotiation of data. And one, I would put as umbrella, and this, thanks for the, I would say, the correction. So we are talking about data society and not about the more data economy. So we need to look at in a broader sense. With this key message, I would now pass the floor to the next keynote speaker, because again, we are starting from local, and this way now it's time to give the floor to the Association of Cities. So now we are introducing Paolo Calzada, that is from Porto Digital, is CEO of Porto Digital, so supporting the city of Porto towards the digital transformation and digital strategy. But at the same time, Paolo Calzada is here representing Open and Agile Smart Cities as coordinator of Council of Cities. So please, Paolo, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's really a great pleasure. I'm just sharing my screen. Let me just. I don't know if you're already seeing my presentation.
Yes, everything fine. We can see you and hear you well.
Okay. Just 1 second to see why. Okay, I'm having some. Okay. Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here to share some thoughts on what we are doing at the City of Porto, and at the same time, what in the perspective of OASC, Open Agile Smart Cities, could be, I would say, the future of this data economy, or this data society, or this data-driven society. I'm really as well very excited with the opportunity to be here with Eddie to learn a little bit more on how the European Commission is planning to supporting us, to support not only the local communities, but at the same time this kind of organizations like OASC in the role that we hope can do. At the same time, it's a great pleasure to be here with all the other participants. Namely, for instance, I'm really happy to be here with Ulrich from Fireware and from Guy X, from whom I am a very big fan of work that Special Fireware is doing in the last year. So I will start by trying to explain you what we are doing in the City of Porto, and at the same time trying to link the work that we are doing on top of data, on top of this concept of creating that economy, or a data-driven society. And at the same time, try to link the work that we are doing with the work that OASC is doing, and the work that OASC is planning to do. Very briefly, I would like to frame my presentation, at the same time frame the work that we are doing in this kind of direct and indirect impact. So all our work at City of Porto is based on organizing our investment, organizing our teams in these 3 main layers. Okay, on the bottom we have the infrastructure. Without a solid infrastructure, not only provided by the city, and as I will explain you later, the City of Porto believes that by owning its own infrastructure is key for helping us moving forward fast. But on top of this, we have the services, and we have all the innovation instruments, which in our view are related with this direct impact. So services that the city is providing on top of this infrastructure, services that are developed on top of this data-driven infrastructure, and then we have this indirect impact. Okay, impact that is related with the value that you can create on top of this infrastructure, namely by entrepreneurs, namely by research institutes that can tackle some of the challenges that the city has on using or gathering the value that the infrastructure is providing. So very briefly, I'll say that as you know, for infrastructure is everywhere. Without infrastructure, without this sensing infrastructure, without this technology that we nowadays are able to deploy in the cities, it will be obviously hard, difficult to move forward in terms of the value that we can create on this data infrastructure. So we have been investing in the City of Porto more than 10 million euros in the last 3 years in expanding our infrastructure. Our main asset is the fiber optical infrastructure that we own. We are a telco operator. We work as a neutral operator. When I say we, I'm saying the Porto Digital, and we sell not only services for the telco operators, but at the same time we support all the municipality and all the public services. And one of the good examples of the services that we are providing to the citizens is our Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi infrastructure that in the last years had more than 3 million devices connected, more than 100 million sessions on top of this infrastructure. Obviously, last year and this year, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the number of devices connected to the city are being reduced. So as I said, there are these direct and indirect impact that citizens, the society, and I would like to show you very briefly how we are using not only this infrastructure to provide services to the citizens, so free Wi-Fi connectivity, but at the same time, how we are using this infrastructure to kind of monitoring what is happening in the city. So this is a kind of a roadmap and a map of a heat map of how the city is on a specific day. So we are using the data gathered by the Wi-Fi network. As I've said, directly the Wi-Fi network is providing connectivity to our citizens, but at the same time is providing us or providing our municipality teams a tool to monitoring what is happening in the city. So very briefly, this is another example of on how we are using this data, okay, in an indirect way to create value to our society. This is a map that shows how the citizens are using the Wi-Fi network. This map represents the when someone is entering the network and when someone is leaving the network. Okay, the blue color shows us when someone is entering the network, and the red color shows us when someone is leaving the color, okay, the network. And this data is being gathered, as I've said, using the Wi-Fi infrastructure that we provide for our citizens. Not only the Wi-Fi that we have spread it all over the city, but at the same time, the Wi-Fi that we are providing freely on all our public buses. So, and this shows how the city is kind of working as a living organism. Okay, this is the city awakening. Okay, and you see the blue is when people is coming to the city center. Here in the city, in the center of the image, you have the heart of the city where people is leaving. Look at the red and entering to another bus. Okay, and then at 8 a.m. then 10, the city is kind of leaving on a regular basis. At noon, the city is starting again, going lunch, and then in the end of the day, you have this shift in the colors. Okay, the red, as you can see in the right upper corner, people are leaving the city. Okay, and people are entering the buses in the city. So it's a small example on how we are using data, not only to provide, I would say, direct services to our citizens, but at the same time, how we are using data to helping us managing the city. It's another example of data that we are collecting for counting vehicles in the city. We have more than 30% of our city with sensing infrastructure for counting vehicles, and we are using this on our urban platform. Now, another example on how we are using data, and this is a very interesting example on how we are using data to provide services to our citizens, is when we have decided to create or to change the entire municipality fleet. We have decided to use more than 40 years of mobility data in order to analyze if it makes sense or not, for instance, to shift all the municipality fleet to electric vehicles. Okay, so we have studied the distance and the longest trip that the municipality vehicles is doing every day. It was possible to see that usually they kind of do small trips during the day. And then we have studied as well how long the cars are parked in order to see if, for instance, it makes sense to have these cars being charged. So I will try to move forward. So the good news was that using this data, we were able to completely change our municipality fleet and to start reducing the amount of CO2s that the cars produce. So very briefly, where in our perspective, Open Agile Smart Cities make an important role is to help cities kind of linking between all the complexity of creating these infrastructures, and especially, as Eddie also said, creating this interoperability and that sharing infrastructure. And why we are doing this and how we are doing this? We are doing this by creating this concept of minimal interoperability mechanisms that kind of create. I'll move forward because I think that we are running out of time. We are not trying to overlap what all other amazing organizations like Fireware are doing, but we are trying to, and I will go here to this very fancy diagram. We are trying to tackle very specific problems in which cities and special mid-sized cities are trying to face, especially as you look at this image. It's very complex nowadays to implement a platform in which you can gather all this data and we can start creating this new innovative service on top of it. And that's why we have decided to create these minimal interpretable blocks in which we define, or we try to kind of work as a proxy entity between the cities, the end users, and then the companies and the organizations like Fireware and others that are working on the technology. So that is our focus, and that's why we believe that we can create this. It's important to have this, or to highlight this role of OWASP as a proxy entity between the end users and the end users here are the more than 150 cities that are part of the organization, and at the same time the complexity of the technology that we have on the other side. So it's also to and to close to frame all this work that we are doing in the context of the activities that the European Commission is being pushed, and the initiatives that are not only being obviously developed by the Commission, but by several other stakeholders in the world. And we hope that the means that OWASP is doing will not only help cities like Porto to move forward in this data-driven economy, but at the same time to help other small and medium-sized companies in Europe to move forward. Okay, and that's it. I hope that I could help make more clear on how cities like Porto are trying to leverage on top of this approach that OWASP is promoting. Roberto.
Many thanks, Paolo. Really interesting, and it's quite connected with what we discussed at the beginning. In particular, I would like to highlight some elements. So there is a link when we said join and share. So definitely the memes represent a right way of going for potentially sharing knowledge, but also data in between, and technology in between cities. So leveraging the experience that one city is doing with another. And I also would like to mention the image you presented at the beginning with a pyramid where you have the infrastructure, the service, the ecosystem, and then to achieve the full value to citizens. This give me the chance to introduce exactly this is that one, because this give me the chance to introduce the following keynote speaker, because now we are talking about in particular ecosystem where we have entrepreneurship and so businesses, and the ecosystem at local, the full ecosystem at local level. So now it's a pleasure for me to introduce Mr. Nenad Sutanovac, that is director of the ICT Association at the Chambers of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia. Long experience in the ICT industry, in particular, is focusing on digitalization of Slovenian economy and building ecosystem, in particular, thanks to the support of digital technology, so pushing for digital transformation in entire society. Please, Mr. Sutanovac, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you for your introduction. You said a lot about me and what we do already. That will be also a focus of my presentation. So I hope I say something more on top of what you did. So thank you very much for inviting me to have this presentation. I will not talk about specific solutions, but on how we in Slovenia work together locally and internationally, trying to build solutions in the area of smart cities and communities, and what are the results of our activities, how to really build this data economy for local communities in Slovenia. So my name is Nenad Sutanovac. I'm a director of ICT Association of Slovenia, which is part of Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Chamber represents the whole industry in Slovenia, and our association represents the ICT industry in Slovenia. So let me say a few words about Slovenia and the ICT sector. Slovenia is a small country. It has roughly 2.1 million inhabitants with a 46 or 47 billion of GDP, which altogether means that we are a size of a little bit bigger city. But on the other hand, it is a land of high technological and digital competencies. So our industry is based on a high level of engineering knowledge, and a high share of export that we do in Slovenia is based on that knowledge. So let's say we are having and developing the knowledge-based economy where data is very important. So export-oriented, including the ICT sector in Slovenia. So approximately 1/3 of the production of the ICT sector is exported. It presents about 4.5% of GDP of Slovenia, which I mentioned. That means about 4.2 billion of revenue. So altogether, not a lot. So in a way, we are small. The quantity is not high, but the quality of that is high. So as we are a country still, we have all institutions and functions as a country. We believe we are the right place to be a reference country. So for many solutions, we are already a reference country. We cooperate with different countries or vendors to build up reference solutions in Slovenia because of that. And regarding the ICT sector in Slovenia, solutions for smart cities are one of the focuses to develop locally, and of course to support the export in that. So the ICT Association that I represent today here, and we are this year, of course, or this time, a part of the organizing committee of this BDVA forum because we have a presidency now. The ICT Association heavily involved in presidency activities, seminars, conferences. We have more than 200 members. It doesn't seem a lot, but that represents more than 60% of the sector in Slovenia. We are involved in different ways with different stakeholders locally, for example, with Slovene Digital Coalition, which represents the highest body to agree on key opinions and views that Slovenia in digital respect should follow. So there we have representatives also from the government and from all different key stakeholders. It's a good body to decide on, or at least to form an opinion which is quite broad. And in this respect, we also work online with all the key ministries that influence the digitalization of the economy in Slovenia, especially so far with the Ministry of Public Administration, which is also responsible for local communities and for the digital infrastructure. But now our cooperation includes also the new government office for digital transformation, which was really a good move for us. We believe this will boost the digitalization of the whole economy and whole society, let's say, and which will, in the next step, probably move to the ministry, so be stronger. We are also part of all relevant European networks and associations, a bit more, of course, also BDV as well. We'll talk about that a bit later more. And with all that, we believe we are a key non-government stakeholder in the digitalization ecosystem in Slovenia, because we are not focused only on ICT sector, but we are very much focused on supporting the digitalization of the whole Slovenia, with a focus on the economy, but still with the building ecosystem for whole Slovenia. So we believe that in the decade we are, so in the digital decade, with all the initiatives EU is providing and building and developing, as Ede also talked, we believe we have an opportunity really to boost the digitalization and the competitiveness of our economies and countries in these years. So it's an opportunity for Europe as such, for European Union as such, and of course for each country within that. So Slovenia sees that opportunity, not just within EU, but also globally. And that's why we have, at least the government says, we should go into the best 5 digital countries in EU according to this index. And we will be very happy to follow those goals and really move forward. Now we are 13. So just maybe I like this expression that without data, you are just another person with an opinion, because there are a lot of discussions of COVID in Slovenia as in other countries, and one of the experts said once that opinion of one individual person is the lowest level of knowledge we can have. So without data, without a lot of data, without expertise, an opinion is really a low level of knowledge that we have. So we try to really grow the awareness in Slovene society and economy about value of data and value of possibilities of artificial intelligence based on data, and data as a basis for decision making, because in Slovenia we sometimes have a problem of decision making, of taking responsibility, and based on data that would be easier. So what are the smart city related initiatives in Slovenia? We are part of the Smart City, Smart Specialization Strategic Partnership in Slovenia. Within that, we run the ICT Innovation Network in Slovenia, which is part of the organizing committee of this conference as well, this forum as well. So within that, we also communicate with all other 9 domains of the Smart Specialization strategy in Slovenia. Then we have AI for Slovenia. We have built the initiative AI for Slovenia, where we try to really support the implementation of all the knowledge and services and solutions we have or we are developing in Slovenia, because we are very strong in research in artificial intelligence, but we are lacking the implementation of that. So we try to support that in all the domains, including smart city as well. We are part of the national, we are national hub for Gaia X in Slovenia. We are leading the smart city and communities group there. It's an important part of the next year's initiatives based on common, especially common data spaces. We are organizing a smart city initiative and South Europe Smart City Conference within that. And the next one will be in the first quarter of next year. We didn't have actually time too many activities within presidency this year. Usually we have it in December, but this time we will have it in the first quarter, so you will be invited. And we are a part of the open data hubs in Slovenia together with the government. So all these initiatives are somehow basis for what we have done so far in the smart city area. So we are, as mentioned, in open dialogue with the ministry, in this case, Ministry of Public Administration, regarding smart cities and communities, because they are responsible for that area as well. On the other hand, we are, with all these associations already mentioned, also associate member of FIWARE. And we have, together with the ministry, sitting together in really many meetings and discussions and brainstormings, managed to agree on OWASP minimal interoperability standards that will be placed in all the projects that are government supported for the cities and communities. And the tenders that are now currently out, not finalized yet, we hope that they will be finalized soon, includes those mechanisms. And we are very happy about that, because that boosts really in a highest possible level the implementation of those interoperability mechanisms. And it's also an opportunity to have solutions that are interoperable and of course have data on one place that could boost the innovation of new services and solutions with startups and any other companies. So we will continue working in other domains as well, especially health, Industry 4.0, and they interconnect with communities and cities anyway in the future based on European data spaces and standards and interoperability that is coming. So this is from my side on what we are doing in Slovenia on that respect. Thank you very much, and open to questions.
Many thanks, Nenad. Thanks a lot. Really interesting. It's already, this presentation give already an overview about how different action from policy side, from technology side, from sharing of different specification can be put all together in order to have actual action on the field to support the local development. Now it's time to move to the second part of this session, where all what we discussed now will be put together and discussed further on with other relevant actors. I will pass the floor to my colleagues Andrea and Vega that will moderate the panel session. Thanks.
Thank you, Roberto. Dear panelists, dear participants, dear friends, I would say, welcome to our short panel where we will exchange ideas and state of play for enabling data society, what we learned today, for local communities. Our three keynote speakers will be joined by five panelists, each representing a very different viewpoint. Dear participants, we will be also taking questions for you. Please ask them via the chat channel. Without further ado, let's start with quick introduction of our guests. Please welcome Ms. Cecilia Cabello Valdez from Data Driven Policy Cluster. We talked quite a lot about European data sovereignty on BDVA forum this week. Ms. Cecilia, could you briefly introduce yourself and the Data Driven Policy Cluster?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Cecilia Cabello. I'm the Director of Science and Technology Policies in the Spanish Foundation for Science and Technology. And like you said, I'm here representing the Data Driven Policy Cluster. The European projects Policy Cloud, Decido, AI for Policy, Public Policy, Duet, and Intercomp have joined together to explore major challenges and trends and opportunities to improve the public sector decision-making that will deliver a healthier, happier places to work. So these 5 projects are financed by the European Commission in the governance of the Horizon 2020 project, and we decided to come together, and the conversions of these projects has already brought fruit to many of the initiatives and things that we're doing today, like today presenting here. And we also have an event to next week to present us more in detail. So these 5 projects, like I said, Policy Cloud, Decido, well, I said the names. Policy Cloud has to do with Policy Cloud for data-driven policy management. Intercomp is a competitive intelligence cloud for HPC platform of AI, STI policymaking. Duet is digital urban twins for smarter decision-making. Decido is evidence for cloud for more informed and effective policies. And AI for public policies, automated, transparent, citizen-centric public policymaking on trusted artificial intelligence. So together, these 5 projects will explore new decision-making ecosystems to build better cities, better administrations, using case studies to better adopt the innovative data and innovative tools in policymaking. So that's a brief introduction of the 5 projects.
Thank you, Cecilia. It sounds perfect. Our next guest is Mr. Giuseppe Ciulla from Taylor Project. Trustworthy artificial intelligence, especially in public sector, is at utmost importance. Please tell us what is the mission of the Taylor Project?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for the question. So Taylor is an EU-funded project that started in September 2020 and it's includes 54 partners. Its purpose is to create critical mass in Europe around trustworthy AI by establishing a research network that includes academia, research centers, and industry. So its main objective is to, by establishing this network, is to define a research and innovation roadmap on trustworthy AI at EU level. And the definition of this roadmap is not only supported by the internal activities of the project, but also by a series of multi-stakeholder workshops to define the strategic private and public sector challenges and the research actions that are needed to address them, also, of course, related to trustworthy AI. So the first workshop of this series has been held in early September of this year, and its focus was on AI, as you mentioned, in the public sector. And during this workshop, participants jointly developed the inputs for this roadmap, for research and innovation roadmap, so to guide, to support, giving that direction on at the EU level on researching about trustworthy AI. And the conclusion of this roadmap is quite interesting, are reported and published in a report that is available on the Taylor website.
Thank you very much. Then next, public open data represents essential fuel for data spaces. Our next guest comes from Italian Institute for Statistics, Ms. Monica Sanapieco. Could you briefly introduce the role of data stewardship, for example, and the National Statistical Institutes, and how institutions like you could help and help local communities in the journey to the data society?
Thank you, Andrea. Yes, ISTAT is the Italian National Institute of Statistics, and our mission is to provide official statistics in the service of citizens and policymakers. In this respect, we have data management capabilities that are actually part of our daily work that could be very important for local communities that we can actually consider in a partnership way with respect to what is our current work. In particular, with respect to these data management capabilities that I was mentioning, for sure, we as National Statistical Institute can offer capabilities related to quality management, for instance, to metadata management, capabilities also related to analysis, not only statistical analysis in a traditional way, but also machine learning and AI-based analysis that could, of course, help local communities, but not just and not only, let's say, in a data stewardship way. So we guide them, but we really see that we can work together in achieving the important objectives that we have ahead, especially in this particular period of post-COVID emergency and which we are starting the recovery phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And let's move to our next guest from Slovenian Digital Coalition and its chapter for smart cities and communities. Let's welcome Mr. Andrej Kotar. We heard a lot about the Slovenian journey towards the smart cities and communities. Mr. Kotar, tell us how and why.
Yes, hello. Hi to everyone. Basically, we started with the baseline. So we see the smart society as a cooperative society. So this is the baseline where we started from, and we set a goal actually to remove the obstacles for cooperation between all parts of society to make this smart society work. So all parts of society, private, public sector, government, and so on. So to make a working ecosystem, and so that partners would be able to look for synergies at combining data and services between different sources, and to generate added value services based on that. So for us, you know, an important part of creating this working ecosystem was, you know, also thinking about, you know, decoupling of added value generation from ownership of digital infrastructure. Because we believe, and not just believe, but actually, you know, if you look around in global digital, you know, reality, that shows, you know, that ownership of digital infrastructure, which is based, you know, for big companies, for generation of added value and services, actually, this is a big obstacle for you know, equal cooperation between different parts of society. So this was also an important part of you know, our thought process, you know, and and to make this cooperation work, so obviously, you know, so important part is building a strong digital infrastructure, horizontal services, which would, of course, enable cooperation at data and microservices levels, and you know, then reuse and monetize data within the ecosystem. So important was, you know, to start developing, you know, horizontal microservices and reuse of building blocks. And I'm talking about concrete building blocks that make different kind of services, like, you know, payments modules, artificial intelligence modules, and that kind of services, you know. And also important part of this cooperation is actually to boost innovativity by hackathons, you know, by enabling, you know, or making easier creation of different startups and so on, based on simplified access to data, horizontal building blocks, and so on, you know. So what we started with, we, you know, took a look around, and we studied, you know, European documents, Digital Europe, and so on. We, of course, we read Living in EU European Political Declaration, and here in Slovenia we already had smart specialization strategy and information society development strategy, and of course we had some organization like Chamber of Commerce Association. Nina presented also e-government section within Chamber of Commerce, where companies, where IT companies joined and communicated together. So, and based on that, we started building actually this ecosystem, actually with the goal to make, you know, open platforms for focused dialogue and cooperation to bridge actually the communication gap that existed, especially between government and companies, between public sector and companies. This was especially, I would say, here a big gap here in Slovenia. So,
thank you, Andrei.
yeah.
Could we leave a bit of discussion around that for the next round of the questions? Thank you very much. And last, but definitely not least, it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Oli Ulrich, dear friend, even if I never
Yeah.
actually met in life, but we did so much together already. Mr. Ulrich is CEO of Fiverr. Please tell us also what is cooking in the Smart Cities and Communities work group within the Gaia X initiative.
Yeah, good morning, Andrea. Good morning to all of you. And that's my role today here as representative of the Smart Cities and Smart Community working groups within Gaia X. So there's one international domain within the different Gaia X hubs from different countries. And in this Smart City, Smart Community working or domain, we have, I think, representatives from 12 different countries involved, and the main activities around here are to bring the flexibility, the cost advantages of cloud-based solutions also to cities, to regions, to communities. And how this can be done has been described in a position paper which was created by this domain group. It was published by Gaia X, and it's available on the Gaia X homepage since roughly 6 weeks. It is titled Gaia X and European Smart Cities and Communities White Paper. And in here we are describing first what is Gaia X, and then how it is adopted in different use cases within different countries. And in here we have use cases from Belgium, from Finland, from Austria, from Slovenia, and also looking outside of Europe, because also India adopted some of the building blocks which are used to create interoperable platforms within cities and communities. And all these use cases are starting first with a description of the solution, which has been realized, then the problem which was solved, the main Gaia X components which were used, and finally the concrete benefits which were achieved. So I can only recommend to have a look at that. Visit the Gaia X website under publications, and you will find it quite easily. You will find the first version, and the second version is in preparation already. It will come out early next year, and by then also having integrated a use case from Germany, because I'm also heading together with 3 other colleagues the Smart City, Smart Region, as we call it in Germany, domain within the Gaia X Hub, the German Gaia X Hub. And there we have created a position paper on Gaia X and Smart Cities and Smart Regions. And a summary out of that will be integrated into the next version of the international position paper. Yeah, so my role here today is mainly representing Gaia X in this panel.
Thank you so much, Ulrich. And we are calling to Brussels right now. Mr. Hartog, what are the next steps? What are you cooking in Brussels for the smart cities and communities?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's what we are cooking. It's what we are all cooking together, and that's one of the things I maybe would like to share with you. Often when you ask, why is this a European conference, or why is this a European project? The answer is because it's funded from the EU budget. You know, that's often the answer, and it's not the answer. It's a valid answer, but it's not the answer I like. The answer I like it because it works from the European principles. It works from a European common interest to stand together and be strong in a global society. I mean, that's the answer that I like. And that is why also in terms of the next steps and what are we cooking, as you said, is yes, there will be legislation. I presented a couple of the packages. There's a number of financing instruments. But what for me is important is the conversation we would like to have directly with the cities and communities. I would like to be able to speak on a regular basis with all 90,000 mayors in the European Union. Now, you have to organize it a bit, but I think it's doable. And that is why, what are we cooking this afternoon? There'll be a competing event when Commissioner Breton meets all European Union mayors. Now, they won't be all online on the Zoom, etc., but we have created that movement, working from values, working from a common vision as to where we would like to go, the Living in .eu movement. Now, Paulo is gone, but OESC has played an important role in this, where we say, well, what are the minimum elements that we need to cover. I think Ulrich, I already mentioned Ulrich and the link to Gaia-X as well, and the management of data. Really, to build that ecosystem from the ground up, you need to have political leadership. That's why we have the conversation between the politicians this afternoon. But I also chair a steering group for this Living in .eu movement that actually tries to bring all of this together through a number of elements. So when you ask what is cooking, and I know that a lot of cooks make an awful stew, but I really would like us to be together and cooking this like we are doing this today. I think Nenad mentioned a couple of things from the presidency, and there will be things with the French presidency. But it's this cooking it together and then also eating it together, of course, is really what we are trying to do in the next steps towards a really good ecosystem to share data.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Ale. There are many initiatives around smart cities and communities and the data spaces around it. How we will harmonize it? How we will make them sustainable? How this will last? What are your thoughts about that?
Andrea, you are right. There are a lot of initiatives going on. And I think it is very important to join forces here. There are a lot of very good initiatives going on, a lot of very valuable standards in place. And our ambition here is to bring the relevant key players together and define common standards. And this mainly end-user driven, bottom-up driven. And the topic of MIMS was already introduced, the minimal interoperability mechanisms. Paulo mentioned it as a first one here in this panel. And from our experience, this is a very, very good approach. It is end-user driven, so it is city driven in this case. And it is bringing up standards to make interoperable data spaces, to make interoperable open data platforms and smart solutions on top of these platforms possible. And I also really appreciate the drive Slovenia brings into the adoption of these standards, because I think it is the only way to define and to adopt these standards when trying to bring interoperable solutions together. And this is not only true for the pure smart city activities, it is also true for other domains which are interacting within smart cities and within smart communities, like the energy domain, like the mobility domain, for example, partly like the agriculture domain, all have relations to the cities or come together within cities and regions. And therefore, also the interoperability of these different domains. And as I'm talking here on behalf of Gaia-X, these different data spaces based on the Gaia-X federated cloud infrastructure, they need to be able to work together. They need to be able to exchange data, and we need to avoid the creation of data silos. And this is the main reason why we created, together with 3 other organizations 2 months ago, the Data Spaces Business Alliance, bringing together the Big Data Value Association, so the organizer of this event here, Gaia-X, then the International Data Spaces Association and the FIDER Foundation. And we are working on a 100 days plan, exactly defining some of the guiding principles to be able to create such interoperable data spaces.
Well, I can only say congratulations to your leadership for a collaboration. I call you the big four of data. So thank you for your work. Ms. Cabello, how do you see the role of European cloud infrastructure to support public administration, to support local communities, cities, municipalities, especially small municipalities?
Yes. Definitely, it's very complex. I think today that we recognize that digital technologies have changed the world, and the citizens expect faster, seamless, on-demand services from their cities, from their policy administration, and this is basically because citizens want their life to be easier. And I think the public sector decision making needs to become more agile. It needs to break down data silos and combine day-to-day tactical decisions into long-term policy strategies. So we recognize that the destructive technologies, artificial intelligence and high performance computing unlock these new opportunities for decision making through the visualizations, simulations, predictions, intelligence that enhance transparency and increase public support and involvement to optimize resources. Because handling data sources too large are complex, and they can't be done by conventional tools. So to support this transformation, like I said, the data-driven policy cluster of the 5 projects, Policy Cloud, Decido, AI for Public Policy, Duet, and Intercom, are these pan-European projects, and we have initiated our project to use these cloud and data-driven policies and join forces to find those cross-cutting issues that we can work together and to support the decision-making process. I think that we're going to also contribute to the European cloud infrastructure, which is very important for public administrations. And like I said, our societies, our authorities, they need to make better evidence-based decision-making. They need to involve local actors, citizens and businesses to ensure higher levels of acceptance for policies and trust. And how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to join together the data-driven policy clusters and share and find synergies, because each one of us, if you gather all, there'll be 19 totally local focused use cases that are going to involve local level citizens, businesses, policymakers, and it's not just limited to one city or one region. It's all of Europe. And so the data-driven policy cluster together, in our feeling, we contribute to European policymaking with our experiences and with the advancements that we're doing. So how are we going to do this? Like I said, our projects are going to try to make replicable solutions, create scalable tools, identify a set of pathways, recommendations, lessons learned, so that public authorities can move and make that transition to use the European cloud infrastructure and to help enable evidence-based policymaking through co-creation methodologies and through the technologies that we have in the projects. So this is how we're going to try it in my modest opinion. But I think it's very positive, the fact that we're not just 5 projects working on our own. We're working on our own, but we're working together.
Mm-hmm. So when we collaborate, magic happens, huh? Thank you for your thoughts, Mr. Chula. Trust and ethics is a key factor for uptake of AI, data spaces also. Tell us what you are doing in the Tyler project.
Yeah, thank you. So
to help us bridge these obstacles.
So let's consider for trustworthy AI that we have to take into account different aspects that in some way has been already underlined by the European Commission within the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, and data is one of these aspects. We have to consider that, but this has been already underlined by previous speakers, that data is vital to produce AI solutions, but at the same time, it's not a matter of quantity of data, but also quality of data to produce trusted artificial intelligence. Data quality and data accessibility are essential requirements to produce and replicate AI solutions that are a good level of quality. In particular, during the workshops on AI in the public sector that I previously mentioned, the 2 aspects emerged. The first aspect is related to the need to overcome information silos, not only among different bodies, but within a body itself. That could be, for instance, a public administration. And this is essential to overcome internal information silos. Is important to produce open data sets that are not only complete, but are also reach also good level of quality, possibly avoiding inaccuracies, mistakes, biases. And to do this, it's essential to increase collaboration and information sharing, first of all, internally an administration itself. And the second aspect, and this is also linked to the first one, is related to the design of both governance models and technologies for data sharing infrastructure, because these are, we can consider them as enablers for AI solutions, because they in some way ensures availability, quality, and accessibility of the data.
Thank you for your thoughts, Ms. Anna Pieko. When it comes to data, we need to apply some rules to help us understand and to be interoperable. Technical and methodological aspects are essential elements for the implementation of data spaces. How can public administration be helped by the National Statistic Organization, by the organization who knows a lot about data for like a whole life? You are working only about data. How they can leverage from your knowledge?
Well, I have a lot of examples in mind, but I would like to focus on one specific example. And this is related to our expertise in metadata management. Because we are talking about data interoperability, we are talking about standards and also technological standards for data interoperability, but actually realizing data interoperability means that we have metadata models that are shared. And this means really at a conceptual level, first of all, then later at a logical level, and later at a technical level. So I think that our first metadata model was created in the 70s, so several years ago. So we have a lot of expertise with respect to that, because our statistics, most of our statistics are already harmonized at the European level, and this is done actually by sharing metadata, having common models, having also from, let me say, an architectural point of view, catalogs that are shared, but with the clear roles with respect to these catalogs. So the global view on metadata should be provided by someone, and the others should map their own local views to these global views. So only in this way interoperability of data can be realized, in the sense that there is really a mapping from the local to the global view of data. And this is something that I think we could really help. We have already official statistical classification that are shared metadata assets, but we are also working in order to have common shared ontologies that go even beyond that. So having this kind of assets, of metadata assets, I think is really helping local communities and smart cities, just as a concrete example.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Monica. Let's go now to my hometown, to Ljubljana. Mr. Kotar, how do you envision further steps? I also
Yeah. Previously, I was working on making a cooperation and working ecosystem a reality. So further steps definitely would be are actually to make steps, how to make this ecosystem work. And we see this in three really very simple steps. First, of course, is building digital data platform, and what is important actually to make federation of existing data platforms work. And here we have big expectation from association like Gaia-X. And another one is a lot of you already mentioned standards. What is important is actually have standard setting mechanisms that are clear. And here a big role play organizations like OASC. And within this, we need, data models harmonization standards and data models repository. This one, and another one is actually business ecosystem harmonization. So to define APIs for key business microservices, for example, like orders, payments, and so on. And another point is to unite technical and horizontal building blocks like GIS, AI, IoT, and so on. And of course, the third step is the enrollment mechanisms. So to add a partner to this ecosystem, this should be very simple. So simple adding of data and services providers to the ecosystem should be standardized and very simple. So those are three, I would say, very simple steps. And what we need actually is our budgets actually for that kind of projects, and of course understanding on different levels, and based on that, I'm sure we can assure different budgets for the projects, either on national and of course even more important on EU level.
Thank you, Andrea, for your thoughts, and of course not the last. Mr. Nina Sutanov, you are representing the ICT sector and the private sector alike. Which are the business models that would support the implementation of the data spaces of data society? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, thank you, Andrea. Actually, the example that we've been discussing of how we manage in Slovenia to support local communities with the interoperability standards is one of the, let's say, business models that are appreciated because they are supported by the government. They're supported by the government because still, if we all understand the role of data, the role of interoperability, the importance of that, but in everyday life, that might be specifically for Slovenia, decision makers sometimes need some push. So giving them some support, including the financing it, is really something that supports that. Let's say, talking about digitalization of economy within the COVID time, the COVID itself pushed companies to really grow the use of digital tools to be able to continue their business. So that was a push that they had. And after that, the awareness of what it means to digitize, what data brings to the table was so high after that they were really looking for all possible tenders to be financed, to finance further projects on that. So this is one of the important part is easy financing, but it's definitely not the only one. It's the whole ecosystem that we built in each country is very important. So the ecosystem consists of competencies, digital competencies on one side, of all the citizens, of employees, of young generation that is coming to the labor market. On the other hand, it's the digital infrastructure. So both are basics, basic parts of, let's say, ecosystem and the business models, as you mentioned. I would just like, out of your question, to add something, that these interoperability standards that we have managed to agree on for local communities did really support and push the, let's say, the human interoperability between cities and communities. That was really nice to see. So the communities and cities and mayors, and they sit together. They sit together with other mayors, with other communities, to talk about what can we do together here. And they didn't talk before that. So they were happy about that support, not just because of the money, but also because of because they were somehow pushed to cooperate, to find consortiums together. And that is, to my mind, something that has come out of it that is also very positive.
Thank you so much. Vega was monitoring the questions from our participants. Vega, do we have some questions for our speakers?
Yes, thanks, Andrea. Yes, we have only one question. It's from Stefano Bonfa. He is from Oxford SD, and he wants to know how you define ecosystem. Maybe the question is for Nanat, because they consider that ecosystem is something like a dynamic data. So time and diversity are critical factors, and they are building a big data living lab, open data cube based on this content. So they want to know how you define ecosystem, if it differs from this idea.
For which speaker is this
question? I think it's from Nenat.
Nenat, could you please? How do you build ecosystem?
How do you build it?
It's define.
Yeah, well, I mean, how do you define it? Well, what I have described is that we define the ecosystem is the environment, is the business environment in support to digital transformation of the economy and society, as mentioned already. So this is the environment that we are trying to build, and to really do it as best as the highest level possible level, it's to really cooperate with all key stakeholders and to support each other in building the complementary roles within this ecosystem. Government is a very important ecosystem. Public sector of the government is very important part of the ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Ninat. Any replicas maybe between the speakers? Would you like to anyone to comment on some thoughts? No? If not, then we are coming close to end of our panel. I would like to ask all panelists, just very quick in few seconds, if you could tell us tomorrow when you'll be back at home, back at your workplace, what will be the next thing you will do to enable data society in local communities? Few seconds. Mr. Hartog.
I'm not sure it will take a few seconds, but I have an easy one, because the commissioner is meeting all the mayors, and I would want to set up a follow-up conversation to really dig down and get a good governance system going on this digital transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Ale.
Yeah, I will continue to support and push the Data Spaces Business Alliance, because I'm really convinced that this will help cities and regions to create interoperable solutions, as I explained before. And I will continue to work to bring concepts which proved to work in cities also to rural areas, because I'm myself living in a small village of 2,000 people, and we are becoming more and more a digital models village with a digital twin, and showing that concepts which are working in big cities can also work in rural areas. And that is part of my mission.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Cabello, what will happen tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow we're going to continue as a cluster to work together. And like I said, prepare our event. We are scheduled to organize an open event, and we want to welcome citizens, policymakers, local communities to better understand our cluster, the data-driven cluster, and the work that we're doing together, the synergies, how we're helping the policymaker, how we're helping the citizens, how we're using all this data and contributing in general to the Europeans' objective of a digital Europe.
Mr. Chula.
Thank you. So I will say that let's continue to support public administration in the digital transformation in adopting solutions that are affordable to enable data sharing, to establish a sort of lingua franca among the municipalities based on standards, as for example, DKTP for metadata or NGSLD for data representation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ms. Anna Pieco.
I will work actually starting from this afternoon on shared metadata assets and on quality management building blocks.
Bravo. Mr. Kotar.
Yes, so what I would like is actually to work less. What would mean actually that I've been able to achieve to motivate others actually to understand that we really have a great opportunity and that we live in exciting times, and to get into some of my functions. But really, what is important is actually that we will organize a third regional Smart Cities and Communities conference in next year. So this is very important for knowledge sharing and for motivating actually the community, and of course to show by example. So our goal is actually to finish the pilot smart city project that we are working on for multimodal mobility.
Thank you, Andrei. And Ninette, what will happen tomorrow?
Well, I'm really happy because it's Friday tomorrow, and the weekend is coming. So it will be time to gather the thoughts and all the discussions we had here. But generally, I would say our following steps will go to different domains that interconnect with smart cities and communities, like e-health, energy, industry, well, smart factories, regarding the data. So regarding the data initiative that we are talking about, all the acts that are coming that will influence the business quite a lot. So this interaction, interoperability within smart cities and communities with other domains would be our next steps.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. It has been a great pleasure to be on this panel with you. Many thanks to you and also to BDVA and of course you participants. Back to you, Roberto.
Thank you. Thank you also from my side. It was a real pleasure having you with us. Thanks for your time. I would say just some message, because we are living now in a really hot periods, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, but there are a lot of opportunity now, thanks to the recovery and resilient funds. Now it's time also to avoid, as discussed today, a silos approach. So to be really focused, thanks to this big amount of money available, and to make things real. So I do hope this session will help to build us what was called, and I love it, this people interoperabilities, to push for people interoperability now. And so I do hope the audience, like this was said at the beginning of the session, join our session, enjoyed our session, and start and continue sharing thought in between. So thanks again, and I do hope there will be other opportunity to have you all together and continue the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you for everyone. I will now start letting in the next session speakers, but many thanks. Have a very nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the support. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for all the support. Sorry for the delay in connecting.
No worries. Good morning, Desislava.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, I needed to keep you waiting for a little while.
it's not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and you have the background image already. Perfect. Okay, Sylvia is joining. Okay. Let's see. Okay, good morning, Sylvia. How are you? You have something happening with the audio. Do you happen to have like a headset? Because it would, like normally the audio works better. Like